Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Well, this show has been going on since 2017 January. God knows how many episodes we've done. And we are on a relaxed schedule. It is summertime as well. And so today we decided we're not going to have a guest because our goal at every show is to try to help people out, have them learn something. And that's what we're going to do today. My co-host is Alex Grossman. And Alex is going to try to explain to everybody why Brien, Ask Brien, is spelled A-S-K-B-R-I-E-N, not A-N or not Y-A-N. But everybody wants to know why it's spelled with an E. And Alex is the Mr. E guy. So, Mr. E. And I'm not talking about Mr. Ed, the horse of a horse, of course.
Well, I think it's because isn't your last name O'Brien?
Well, that's only when I'm a member of the IRA.
Oh, okay, just checking on that.
Better be careful out there now.
I'm
gonna have to watch my back now.
I'm keep quiet on that one. Could it be though, because the E stands for our great engineer?
It could be. I don't know if that's the main reason, but I'll take it. Thank you, Alex.
Especially since we only started with that E about 4 years ago.
Sure, yeah. It's interchangeable. That's all right. I know what it is. All good.
Well, there's no doubt there's a lack of energy in this particular broadcast. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's because nobody here is enthusiastic!
Cool. Oh, good. We spun out quick. Thank God.
Well, no, because I know that.
Oh man, my eardrums won't survive that early. That's just not doing it. Just not doing it. So there's obviously a little bit of energy. There's a little bit of enthusiasm and excitement. But Peter, what you're known for more than anything is the big E.
Empathy.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Sure.
Right, engineer? Right?
Uh-huh.
She said, yeah.
Yes, Alex, you are correct.
She says, when I think of Peter and coming on the show, once a week, it's like, that's all I'm thinking.
Empathy.
Peter's the most empathetic person I've ever met. He doesn't even know what the word ego means.
No, not even ego.
Unless she's referring to ego maniac.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm trying to hurt these poor mics today.
But at least our egomaniac is good at doing one thing, educating
I thought you were going to say drinking iced tea. I thought you were going to say drinking iced tea, but thanks.
Well, we won't go there. That's Long Island iced tea.
Yeah, we do wonder what's in there, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Hey, that's another E. Exactly. But you also have to mention this thing called experts. What is that all about with Ask Brien? I have no clue what an expert is. Why don't you tell us?
Well, an expert is someone who has at least 1 hour of a show a week. Is that true, or is there another explanation? Oh, okay.
Okay, hold on. Where's the buzz?
I need.
Do you have a buzz?
I need laughter. That's what we need.
Yeah, exactly.
Need a laughter.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. So to be an expert on this show, okay. Now Alex only has 1 hour, and that's why he came up with that number, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to be on the show. But for the average expert, we require 10,000 hours, and we calculated that out. Because everybody says if you do something for 5 years, you'll probably become an expert in it. But 5 years usually is working 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. That's 2,000 hours for five years. That's 10,000 hours. And we determined that you probably need to have at least 10,000 hours doing something. Now, if you own a company, just an example, like let's say Race Ready, you could probably get your 10,000 hours done in like 3 weeks because, you're working 24/7. But for the average person, it's going to take 5 years. The average person who's an entrepreneur, at most 2.5 years, because he's got to work 80 hours a week to really, really develop something from scratch or to create a real good business and be successful. And so therefore, it's going to be at least 2.5 years, can be up to 5 years. And here's the insult part. I guess if you're Generation Z, it'd take you 20 years because you're working 10 hours a week. But for most
Ooh,
people,
that's mean. That's really mean.
well, they have the other E, ethic, work ethic.
I like that. I like that.
Exactly. All right, so now, without any further ado, do you have a drum roll?
Oh, we do.
All right.
Yeah.
Without any further
There you
ado.
go.
All right.
We do.
Okay. So our guest today is Alex Grossman and Peter Bronstein. I don't know if you know who that is, Alex. Either of them. I don't know either of those people.
I'm not gonna say where that list shows up. Didn't I used to have those pictures in the post office, little wanted posters underneath them? Isn't that those
I thought we had a pact that we weren't going to disclose our fugitive background. All right, so the research team over lunch came up with a concept that they want us to kind of explore, go over the pros, the cons, and how to build it. Okay. And I mentioned this to you early, but the audience does not know. We're going to create an app. It'll be on the iPhone and the Android. So we're going to have it on two places. And the name of the app is called Walkber. WALKBER. That's the app. Okay? So that's going to be the app. And what is the app going to do? Well, the app is going to deliver food to wherever you are located. Not everywhere. I mean, I think top of Mount Everest is going to be tough. Actually, we're going to give an exclusive. Jen can deliver all the food to the top of the Mount Everest.
Okay.
Right.
When do you start climbing? Let me know. You can get a head start. Somehow I don't see you doing that.
And exactly.
Sigh. We'll just leave it there.
Sigh.
We'll leave it there.
All right. So now this is kind of being like the extra mile. You can get DoorDash, you can have Uber Eats. There are plenty of companies out there that they'll deliver food to you wherever you are, right? But they're coming to your house, they're coming to your business, but they're not coming to where you are. So obviously it's going to have to be GPS centric, okay? And that's why we have an engineer on the show to explain how that's going to work GPS centric over there. Also, if the Wi-Fi is down, I think we're SOL, but we're not allowed to use the first S on the radio, but it's SOL. And Alex can explain to us how we're going to do this app. So first, Alex, if you're starting this app, what's the first thing you're going to do?
Well, first thing I'm going to do is come up with a great idea. That's it, right? So we've got Walkber, which is a fantastic idea. And then I'm going to do a little bit of market research and find out if there is already a Walkber, number one. And that also leads into some other legal pieces. Whether there's a Walkber already, if anybody's executed one already, or there's anything even close to it out there, or if it sounds like a really good idea. So, market research is probably the first thing you do. You look at that competitive landscape. You look at who your potential competitors could be, because, someone like Uber Eats could come up with something where now they have, they follow you around the streets with a bag and hands it to you, and you eat while you walk, which seems very safe and very very good for your body. And then you're going to go and you're going to validate that concept with a number of users that are typical users. So friends, family, people you hate, people you love, engineers, people like that, skeptical people on the radio, people like that, and get an idea if it's really going to meet their needs. Because ultimately, before you start developing an app, you say, does it meet someone's needs? After it does that, you have to look at your budget. Do I have the budget to do it? And we can talk about how much that costs. But aren't there some legal pieces that you should put around that before you go ahead and just start developing, Peter?
Well, you mentioned a budget, but in order to do a budget, don't you need to determine what the sales projections would be? You need to find out if it's feasible, right? That's part of it.
Well, you got to find out what it's going to cost you to build it and to launch it, and then determine what your available market, total available market is, and then lay that in. You can do it both ways. You can go, well, here's my TAM. My TAM is everybody who walks everybody who moves from place to place, everybody who eats. Mostly, most people eat. I found that's the case. So you've got a pretty big TAM there. So that's an easy one. The hard one is really, what are my competitors doing? What do I steal away from my competitors? What's the need that I'm fulfilling that's different? That'll kind of give you the top line. But then you have to decide, well, how am I going to pay for it? So some apps, in particular this one, is one you're probably going to assume that we're not going to go out and go try to get VC money. You and I have talked about how that kind of works sometimes. You're probably not going to just have an unlimited amount of resource. So you might hit up friends and family, people who eat, other people like that, and say, here's what it is. But you're going to have to either decide, am I going to do a lot of this work myself? Am I going to have someone do it for me? And what is it going to cost? And there's kind of these budgetary formulas to determine the type of app that you have. And I can kind of run through, the 3 types of apps there are and what the budgets usually are to develop them. Well, that, I think, is a good place to start.
Well, first of all, app could also stand for appetizer because we're dealing with food, right? So that's one thing, right?
That's true. The other thing Would you like a shrimp cocktail with that?
And
yes.
Then hitting up friends and family. Well, you're my friend, so Alex, can you loan me some money? Jen, what are you doing?
I'll pay for half a Whopper.
I'm fresh out of bills.
You can deliver every package yourself. Okay, there we go.
This is how you discover your true friends, guys.
Yeah.
And gals.
There's some coins and some lint in the bottom of my purse.
Yeah. Well, you got a couch, right, Jen? You can just get on the couch and
true.
Look in the full.
I thought for Lent we have to wait until Ash Wednesday. All right, so. That's Lent. Something
Peter.
Close. All right. All right. So first of all, I definitely think the legal issues are here, and I could go over those as well with you. But that's really kind of after, I think, market research. I mean, because.
But before you start developing, you probably want to make sure you have those pieces in place so that you're not stepping on someone else, right? You probably want to trademark that idea, and you probably want to make sure that you got a corporation so you can pay for it, unless you're going to just go in your pocket and not write it off. I mean, don't we care about that stuff?
Well, no, because we're going to our couch, so what are we worried about? And we're going to get the lint and when we go to the laundromat, we'll get all the lint we need, so we'll be fine. All right, so now, so the name with the trademark and the corporation, that's all important. And I probably would say the first phase may be to form a corporation. And we've discussed on the show a number of times. We could use our legal sponsor, Legal Steps, and you could take a course there, whether or not you wanted to incorporate or form an LLC. The reasons why people would want to form an LLC or corporation is because they want to limit their liability. How do you limit your liability? Well, if you have a limited liability company or a corporation and you follow the corporate formalities and you don't, commingle your corporation with your personal bank account, like taking $18 out of your corporation to pay for your donuts that you buy. I'm sorry, Alex, everyone now knows you're taking your $18 out of your company to buy those donuts. But if you don't do that...
Only for employees. Only for employees, Peter. Only for employees.
Well, how many police officers work there? All right, so...
lots of them.
Well, that's what the donuts are for. So anyway, if you follow all those things and you're not violating any of those rules, then having a corporation or LLC will protect you, meaning that you will not become personally liable for any of the problems. So therefore, if something happens and the company, I'm not going to say violates a patent because that's a little bit different, but if they violated a contract and the contract forces you to pay $18 million because it's a bad contract, well, if it's a corporation, you can walk away, and if the company has $20,000 on the bank, you'll lose your $20,000, but that's it. But your personal residence and all of your personal assets are going to be protected. So that's why people generally will form a corporation. Now, the other angle and aspect for corporations, and we're not going to get into specific details for this portion of the show, but you also want to make sure one of the reasons why you're going to protect yourself is you want to have you're going to have to follow corporate formalities. So what does that mean? Well, that means you're going to file your annual reports with the Secretary of State. You're going to prepare minutes of the corporation so that it'll tell you who the shareholders are, directors, officers, bank accounts, accountants, issuing the shares to the shareholders. That'll all be done in minutes. And then you'll have bylaws that'll be the rules and regulations that govern the company, and issuing the stock certificates and getting your tax ID. All that stuff is covered in the legal steps courses, as well as you can have that completed for you. But that's what you're first going to want to do. You're going to want to go through that process so that you are protecting yourself from that personal liability. Now, it's not going to protect you if you do an intentional wrong. What does that mean? Well, I can't form a corporation and then hit you over the head with a baseball bat. That's not going to cover you, right? You are still going to be liable. There's protections there to protect people from just forming a corporation and doing bad things. So it's not going to protect you from something like that. But most things you will be covered. Now, if you have that all done, then you need to come up with a name. Now, we came up with the name Walkber. That was just, thinking about it out of my head, and I just came up with a name. And, you're walking and burr, I don't know, or whatever it is. But Walkber, that's our name. It's short, sweet. Well, the first thing I think you're probably going to want to do, even though it's an app, and I have a back question to you, Alex, is, so it's an app. It's called Walkber, okay. Do we need to get the domain name first or the app name first?
Absolutely. The app name will be easy. We'll talk about that. But, yeah, you want to absolutely have a domain. Yeah, you want to have a place that you're going to point to. You want to have a place where you're going to have some of your back-end pieces. So you want to see if you can get that domain. Because one of the things today is that, I hate to say this, but the app is going to start with marketing. You're going to find out, can I get that Instagram handle? Can I get it on Facebook? Can I get it on TikTok? Can I get all my social media platforms that I care about? Can I get Walkber on there? The next is, can I get walkber.com? I want to have that. I want to have that domain name. I probably also want to do .net. I probably want to do .io. I want to cover everybody who's going to copy me.
So, Alex, it's available, and I'm buying it now. It's $9.98. I now own Walkber. All right.
You're getting ripped off, man. I get it for you for $4.95. Come on.
All right. So let's see here. I just bought Walkber. See that, Jen?
Beautiful.
I just bought Walkber.
So now the next thing you need to do, after you've secured your domain name and you feel really good about it, and you've done the market research and you've talked to everybody you know, and they understood in 3 seconds what Walkber was.
I only have 2 friends, so it's not going to be hard. I got you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't
Jen,
have anybody
so
really. You talk to the dog and the cat, and pretty much you're done. So, yeah. So right after that, it's like, what do you think, Fido? Yeah, it's okay. Good. We're good. Okay. So if they can get it in 3 seconds, which is kind of the general rule, and Walkber would be a hard one to do because it's a 7-letter URL, so that'd be pretty tough. But let's say you do get that and you start it. Now you say, I'm going to develop an app. Well, obviously you're not going to do it, but it's better to know the steps. You're going to hire a developer, but you really can't hire a developer until you determine what the app is going to look like. So in Walkber, you already said it, Peter. The thing it's going to do is you're going to log into the app. And then it's going to have a fantastic UI that's very simple and easy. And you're going to choose what you want to eat. You're going to have to work with a number of different companies to supply that food, I would assume. Or you're just going to run to 7-Eleven and throw it in your car and carry it out there, one or the other. And at that point, you're going to have contracts that you're going to have to worry about taking care of, but don't put that aside right now. But then you're going to have to determine, what is it going to look like? What's it going to feel like? And is it an e-commerce app? So this is where it breaks into the 3 different types of apps in general. The first type of app is an app where you just go purchase it. You purchase the app, or you give it away for free just so you can grab people's information that you can sell at a later date, which is pretty unethical, but people do it all the time. And those apps can cost as low as $500, and usually an app like that never gets over $3,000 in cost. The second type of app is more of an e-commerce app. And again, these don't break exactly there, but an e-commerce app where you give the app away for free, you have in-app purchases. With in-app purchases, someone has to have an e-commerce back end. If they're very simple, these can be things where you're purchasing an upgrade to the app, which can be done all through the App Store, whether it's on Google Play or whether it's on the Apple App Store. And you can do this very simply, and those can cost between $3,000 and $50,000, somewhere in there. Then you take an app like Walkbur, which is a true e-commerce app that's going to connect outside. So it's going to have a front-end development with back-end developments, back-end servers, other components that are involved, which we don't have to really go through. But you're going to need performance on the front end, performance on the back end, and that can cost $50,000. And if you're talking about a big app, it could be easily $100,000. So a lot of lint and a lot of quarters, in the couch. That's usually where you're going to go. And then corporate apps.
We got to take a quick break,
that third
Alex.
type of app.
We have to take a quick break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And this radio station is like no other station in the world. That's right.
I knew where you were going with it.
That means we've been doing the show together too long.
That's too long. Yeah.
Alex, are you there? I am here. I'm just getting excited there. There's no other station in the world.
There is no station.
No, we were talking about app development, and I was saying that last app type is the corporate type, where you'll see big corporations. They can spend millions of dollars on an app, but we don't care about that. We care about hiring someone to be able to build the app. And you'll hear a lot of people will say, well, there's 20 steps to building an app, or 10 steps, or 5 steps, and really, most of those steps fall into the technical side that you don't care about, but you should know about. So, Peter, you said, well, this app is going to work on Android and it's going to work on iOS, which is the Apple platform. And if that's the case, you're going to have to get a tech stack, is what we call it, to do the appropriate programming languages, the frameworks, and also you're going to have all the tools that you're going to use in order to build the app. But you don't care about that. You're going to hire a developer who's going to do that.
What's a tech stack?
What is a tech stack?
Yeah.
That's basically the technology you're going to use to build it. So you're familiar with building web sites, right? So what is a tech stack that you use mostly for your website?
Well,
come on.
First, I'm going to start out with a website, then not a website, a domain. Then after I get the domain, I'm going to have to get it hosted. After I get it hosted, so I have a location to put the website, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have to design the pages that I want. So I'm going to determine, probably the first thing I'm going to do is go over the home page, go through that listing. So I've got the home page, what do I want to put on there? Some people use About Us, some people don't. The key really is to try to get people to know what the site is all about. So I want to design something that has very, very user-friendly. So the UX and UI has got to be really, really strong. So that's going to be very important. Colors, whatever, and then we're going to get through all that stuff, go through every single page, and then we got to give it to a coder or somebody that's going to use, a Wix or some platform that can actually easily accommodate it. That's all I know.
But mostly what you're going to do is you're going to know those frameworks are like HTML and JavaScript and Python and stuff like that, right? Those are the things you're going to do, and you're going to know that you're going to host these in the cloud, and you're going to have a hosting platform. So those things are exactly the same when you're developing an app. You just have a different tech stack. And in an app, the user interface part of it, the front-end development, is what's going to be on the phone or the tablet or whatever you're using, your watch, to be able to work while you're walking, so you don't walk across the street while you're ordering your taco and get hit by a car. So that is the front end. The back end is where all of that, the guts are going to be. That's going to tell someone after they use Walkbur and they order a taco from Jose's taco service, that it's going to actually get picked up at Jose's, and Jose is going to make this particular chicken taco, and the person's name is going to be in there. And then, of course, the most important thing is they're going to pay for it, right? So that's all going to be the e-commerce platform. And then after that happens, they're going to do an unbelievable amount of testing. They're going to test the UI. They're going to test it with you, your friends, Fido, Kitty, whoever it's going to be that you're testing with, your level of friends. You might even ask the engineer to test, and she's going to tell you how crappy it is. But then you're going to do that functional testing, that usability testing, all the normal stuff, and performance testing, because you don't want to have to wait while you're getting it, and all that's going to determine where it gets hosted and what it gets done. That part of the app development you're going to hire an app developer for. The question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to hire someone that's fully integrated, meaning that they're going to do a lot of the work that you already did, which is market testing and functional UI testing, or you're going to do that yourself? And the more important thing is the launch and the marketing around the launch. So, where do I publish it? Are you going to have an app developer publish it? Are you going to publish it yourself? Are you going to sit there every day and go through all of the information, the feedback that comes in, and determine what you need to update and what you need to do to make it better? We call those bug fixes in some cases. And then are you going to go ahead and are you going to do the advertising to get it going? And then as you do that, are you going to be watching your competitors? You're going to go through, it's a rinse and repeat process. Are your competitors coming up with, do they have something like run burr that's faster than your walk burr? And you're going to have, walk faster burr or something like that to keep up with them. So this is not a launch and forget process with an app. It's a launch and expect to spend more money as soon as it launches. And of course, at that point, you've done all your research, you know what your available market is. Now you have to determine, what are my statistics? Am I winning or am I losing? Do I continue to do this? And the most important thing I forgot is, did you do all the contracts with the people who are actually doing the work, hire people to actually do it? That's where all the hard work comes in when you're talking about an app where people are involved. So when you see things out there and people say, well, the app's going to cost you $500. And you just go, well, when you're done, it's $50,000. So I think there's a lot to really consider there. And then how do you protect yourself? How do you protect yourself with trademarks and other things so people don't come up with walk burr with 2 R's and take all your business away, right?
Well, I'm not worried about that last part, because if the mark is confusingly similar to another mark that's already been registered, then it's going to be called trademark infringement. But you did bring up issues about contracts, and we are going to take a break shortly, but I just want to quickly go over, and that is, contracts are very, very important. On the other hand, and I'm an attorney, but no matter how important they are, it really comes down to an issue of trust and who you're dealing with, because you can have the best contract, and I'm not saying anything negative, but the guy is in Bangladesh and he's not going to do anything, if there's a problem, right? So it really is important. 2 steps, right? One is to have the contract, but also just as important is the vendor that you're dealing with. What's their review history with? What do they look like on paper? Because you don't want to just go out and nilly-dilly sign a contract with anyone, even if you get the contract that you want. So that's something else we're going to talk. But we are going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And no word from our sponsor.
And our sponsor is Legal Steps, legalsteps.com. It's spelled LEGALSTEPZ. That's with a Z.com. So log on to Legal Steps. You've got this great idea. Where do I start? That's your first step. Check out legalsteps.com. They will walk you through the entire process of you kind of getting the footing underneath you. So with your great idea, your great product, whatever it is that you've been talking about for months, maybe even years, that, I really got to get this business started. The experts at Legal Steps can help you do that. That's your first step, literally and figuratively. You can take different courses to register a trademark, form an LLC, form an S corporation. And what I really loved about it is that it takes the guesswork out of it. Certainly, sometimes legalese can be a little confusing. And when you're on legalsteps.com, there is no confusion. You cannot mess this up. You're watching your legal expert, and as you see them on your computer screen, it's like a picture-in-picture. So you can see them, you can see what they're working on, and then you can see your work as well. And you are following along. They are holding your hand virtually and showing you how to answer the questions the right way. So you know that that you're in good hands. You know that you're doing everything correctly. There's going to be no confusion at the end of it, no bounce back of, oh my gosh, I didn't do this the right way. Now I've got to start all over again. That doesn't exist with legalsteps.com. Those experts that I talked about have over 30 years experience. I think 34 if we're splitting hairs, no big deal. And,
I don't have a lot of hair to split.
maybe we shouldn't do that. We'll stick with 34 on the nose. So you know that you're in good hands. You're not with somebody who's green and wet behind the ears. All of those courses reviewed by those attorneys. You can pause, rewind, take notes, which is huge for someone like me. I need to have something physical. So I had my notebook and I was able to highlight and scribble and scratch and all of that. So it was really super easy for me. I did it in less than 2 hours. I took one of the courses at my own pace. I've got kids and dogs and spouses and houses and cars and grocery store. I don't have time to work on somebody else's schedule. You are very much the same way, so you can work at your own pace. And finally, those courses all fall under $150 each. Go to legalsteps.com, legalstepz.com.
Well, thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Legal Steps, for sponsoring our show.
You got it.
All right. So we were talking about contracts, and I want to go over something that's very important. Alex, 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, the contract that you're going to be dealing with is probably going to be already a pre-done document. So, in other words,
Right.
if you want to sign a contract to have, Alex Apps do it for you, Alex Apps probably have a standardized contract that says, you have to give me your firstborn, you have to give me, $1 billion out of the first $1 billion you earn will go to me. I mean, that's the point. The point is these contracts are written so one-sided by an attorney that the company hires, right? So in terms of trying to get deals.
You bring up a great point on that, right? That point is people don't get this all the time, is that a lot of times they're going to try to tie, and you should really talk about, they're going to try to tie your revenue into their ongoing revenue to give you a low price to start out with. But hey, don't worry about it. We'll just take 10% of your company when we're all done, right? Even if your company, your idea, Walkber could be the next Uber, and it could be worth billions of dollars, and in the end, they're going to own 10% of it. So I think that's a big red flag that people miss all the time.
Well, that and the fact that any well-written contract is going to sit there and say, we don't take any responsibility if we did it wrong, and you're supplying us the information. You have to evaluate whether or not it's right or wrong. Well, why did I hire you? I'm hiring you to do it. I'm not. If I was a tech person that knew all these ins and outs, I wouldn't need to hire you. Unless it's a time issue. And there are situations where it's a time issue, but most of the times, people starting out, they don't have a lot of money, but they also don't know how to do that area, and so they have to give it to somebody. When they give it to somebody, again, that's why it's so important to go to people that have good reviews. And by the way, I don't care what company is. You can think of the top company in the world. Every company has, 15 to 1,000, 1 stars. Even companies that have 20,000 5 stars, right? So you always run that risk that even with a bigger company, you're going to end up in that issue. But the other issue is that, listen, they're going to determine the terms of the contract, and you're usually not going to have the ability to do anything unless you're dealing with a one-off person, somebody that has 5 people or less, and it could be even 1 person or less, but generally at least 5 people or less. They're not going to have a contract because they didn't go to an attorney, and that's even more risky because, A, they're not really that big, obviously, right? They certainly, whatever they write, whatever your agreement that you write may or may not be enforceable. Why? Contracts aren't just enforceable because, okay, my contract here says, Alex, you have to work 18 hours on my project. You didn't work 18 hours, I win. Well, you might win, but if the guy's got no money in the bank account, what did you win? If the guy is based in South Dakota, go collect. So there's a lot of variable factors, right? Most people like to go with a reputable company if they don't have any background at all. So let's discuss that a little bit. So let's say I want to find
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it from the beginning, because you bring up a really good point there, which is selecting an app developer or a development company. Now, you and I have both seen this so many times where you get a contract from one of these companies and the first page is the services are going to do, and there's 15 pages behind that's all legalese that my eyes are glazing over with, and I have to call my very intelligent attorney to look at the other 14 pages, right? That's really common, and then that always turns people off, but that's a common thing. But let's talk about the most important part of this, which is really what you expect from a developer and what you're paying for. So all of us have people, friends, family, people that we know who have had successful app development, and they go, "Hey, don't go to that big development company. Go to Harry over here. He developed my app, and it was really easy, and it was done." And everybody has a Harry they know or someone they know to do that. And what usually happens is that when you go to a single developer or a small development group of 1 or 2 or 3 people, it becomes more of a self-serve. You end up getting into a consultative agreement with them where they're asking you questions that you have no expertise in, and they're expecting you to give answers, and they're going to develop what you tell them to develop rather than what's going to work. And that's one of the problems you have when you're a first-time company having an app developed, and you really, you'll use the typical thing of, "Hey, it needs to be like this app," and they'll go, "Okay, I'll make it look like that app." Well, functionally, you haven't gone through every single portion of the app. You don't understand how the back end works. You're just looking at the pretty screen, and they're taking you literally going, "Let me make it look like the pretty screen." Then you get into it and go, "Well, it doesn't do these 10 things." Well, you didn't tell me to do these 10 things. And that's what the difference between going through like a single person app developer where you're not writing what's called an SOW, a statement of work, or a complete description of what the product you want looks like, which you're not going to be able to do unless you have significant background experience. You're just going to get what you don't want. And that's why sometimes it's less expensive in the end. We've always heard this, right? It's easier to do it once right the first time than do it, wrong 10 times to get it right. And that's why sometimes it's better to go to a development company that is going to look at, you're going to look at the portfolio of what they've done. You're going to look at their team and the structure of their team, who does what. And then you're going to say, is this, have they built an Uber-like app so they know how to build Walkber, or were all their apps, for the legal profession or for restaurants or something like that?
We got to take a quick break, Alex. We're going to be right back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. So, Alex, we were discussing that issue, and I wanted to know, how do you select the right person or company?
That's one of the hardest parts of app development is knowing what team or what person you want. And I always start with laying out your goals. I mean, you have to be practical with yourself, and you have to say, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at. This is what I know for sure, this is what I think I know, and this is what I absolutely don't know. And then take everything you read on the internet and throw that away, because that's all usually just marketing. And the best way is to kind of look at their portfolio. What have they done before? What's like what you have done? And then more importantly, look to the people that they developed for, and talk to them and see what their level is compared to your level. Because if you have someone who executed a fantastic app for someone who has the experience, who's done 20 other apps or has a lot of background in this, that may not be the person you want, because they're used to working with people who are going to already steer them in the right direction and know what to do. I mean, the best is find someone who's developed an app similar to yours that works perfectly, and the person they work with has no experience whatsoever. That tells you that they've done the right thing. They've gone through the checklist. They consulted with you. They had communication all throughout the entire process, and they could understand what the person was saying and turn their dream into reality, so to speak. They could also, explain the development process to you, so you would know what they were doing along the way, when to expect it, when to test, and also that they got done on time and on budget. Budgets tend to creep, and you have to start with a cost estimate. So choosing the right one, if they can't give you a cost estimate and they can't show you that they can stay within 10% of that budget based on the SOW or statement of work you have, walk away. That's just walk away. And then you also have to be really open with them about what your budget is and say, well, look, I may along the way make changes, and I need to know you're not going to charge me exorbitant amount for every change I make. I think that's really also important. And then, you mentioned it, Peter, references, reviews, reputation, how much jail time have they spent, things that are really, really important.
Alex, that was confidential.
And the last thing I would say, is that confidential? I'm sorry about that. And the last thing, I wasn't talking about your jail time. Come on. The last thing that
I'm a fugitive.
I would say is after you launch the app and get it out there, we kind of call it post-launch support is what I tend to call it. But after that, what are they going to do to help you? If you need to make modifications, you need to make changes, you need to do updates, how good are they going to be with that, and what price are they going to put? In fact, I know you talked a lot about contracts, but a lot of times you want to lock them in and say during the first 3 years or during the first year, we're going to have this level of support at this price. That's probably the most important thing you can do. And, you just do it carefully like you would approach anything else. Don't jump at it. Don't choose the first one. And I'll say the last thing on this is that I have often done this where I've taken 3 of the ones that I like, had them give me proof of concept of what they were developing, and then chosen from there, even if it costs you a couple dollars to have them do that.
Well, we're going to be taking a last-second break here. Actually, it's not a break. It's over. You can listen to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Over and out.